Good morning, council. Now calling the case of the estate of Samuel Farnsworth versus the city of Philadelphia. Would council like to make appearances?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. My name is Fadil Adeite, last name spelled Adeite, and I'm joined here with my co-counsel, Miss Anna Kim.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
Together, we represent the plaintiff in today's case, the estate of Sam Farnsworth.
Okay, thank you. Defense.
Yes, Your Honor, good morning. My name is Patrick McDonald. That's spelled McDonald. I'm joined at council table today by my co-counsel, Ms. Abigail Davis.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Together, we're here on behalf of the city of Philadelphia.
Okay, it's my understanding that there are no pretrial matters or motions. So are the parties ready to proceed to opening?
Your Honor, while there are no pretrial matters, there are two things we want to note for the court today.
Sure.
The first is that we have a binder with all the exhibits and documents related to this case. Would you like a copy of this binder?
No, you can just hand up exhibits as they come up in trial.
The second thing, Your Honor, prior to today's trial, I had a productive pre-trial meeting with opposing counsel, and we moved to pre-admit two different pieces of evidence. The first is Exhibit 1, and that's a photograph of Sam Farnsworth.
Okay.
And Your Honor, the second piece of evidence is Exhibit 35, and that's a photo of a fence around a light pole.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
With that, we're ready to proceed.
Okay, anything from the defense before we move forward?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Plaintiff, you may open.
May it please the court. Counsel. Members of the jury. The city was overwhelmed. So they didn't do what was obvious. It's February 9th, 2025. Super Bowl Sunday. Our own Philadelphia Eagles are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. They hope to do their job and prevent a three-peat. The Eagles win, and every single person who isn't from Kansas City. Philadelphia, 100,000 people rushed into the streets out of the bars. And things start to get crazy. People are flipping cars, they're throwing beer cans all across the street, they're climbing up light poles. Two of those people were named Sam Farnsworth and his friend Lanny Davidson. You see, Miss Davidson is one of those people who went up a light pole. She climbed up to the top. Nothing but a 2-foot fence in her way. But you'll learn she came down a lot faster than she went up. When Miss Davidson gets to the top of that light pole, she falls. She lands on her friend Sam Farnsworth. She crushes his skull. He dies. Now, members of the jury, I want to be clear. What Lanny Davidson did, that was not the smartest choice. It was reckless. But you'll learn that you're here today because it was completely predictable. The city of Philadelphia could have saw this coming and prevented it the way they had done hundreds of times before. Putting grease on the light poles, stop people from climbing. You see, members of the jury, that was an obvious solution for them. But on Super Bowl Sunday, they were overwhelmed by other things, so they didn't do what was obvious. That's why Sam Farnsworth's family has brought a claim of negligence against the city of Philadelphia. The judge will instruct you that we have to prove that three things are more likely than not. First, that the city of Philadelphia was negligent, or that they didn't act with ordinary care. Second, that Sam Farnsworth suffered harm. Both sides of the case agree on that. And third, that the city of Philadelphia's negligence is what caused Sam Farnsworth's harm. We're gonna prove those other two things to you today, members of the jury. That the city was negligent and that is what caused Sam Farnsworth's harm. And we're gonna do that today by proving three simple facts. First, the city was overwhelmed. Second, the city didn't make the obvious fix. And third, that's what killed Sam Farnsworth. So we'll start with that first point. The city was overwhelmed. You'll learn today that in the weeks leading up to Super Bowl Sunday, the city of Philadelphia had other things on their mind. After 7 straight years of adding grease to the light poles and keeping people safe, they thought the costs had become too much. They thought that it was giving them bad publicity. You'll learn that they just wanted to focus on other crimes. And that'll lead us to that second fact, that the city didn't make the obvious fix. Because today, the director of public safety for Philadelphia will take this witness stand. You'll be forced to admit that in January of 2025, when he decided to get rid of those light poles, he saw 5 times as many pole climbing incidents as he did before. And you'll learn that even though he knew that data, he still ignored the obvious. That'll lead us to that third fact we'll prove today. That the city's negligence is what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. That pole climber, Randy Davidson, she'll take us. She'll tell you exactly what was going through her head when she decided to climb that light pole. She'll tell you that she had been in a situation like that before, and the only reason that she didn't climb the light pole because there was grease on it, keeping her from doing it. Members of the jury, at the end of today's trial, it'll be clear. Sam Farnsworth is dead because the city of Philadelphia failed to do their job. At that time, I'll ask that you find the only verdict that the evidence supports. Find the city liable for their negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, plaintiff. Defense, would you like to open now or waive until your case in chief?
No, Your Honor.
You can go ahead.
Thank you. May it please the court. Mr. Adeite. They decided to get high. It's not the city's fault they fell down. Members of the jury, when Mr. Adeite spoke to you a moment ago, he told you a lot about the city's decisions, what they knew, what they decided. But I couldn't help but notice that he left out 3 personal decisions that Sam Farnsworth and his friend Lanny Davidson made the day Sam died. The decision to drink, the decision to do recreational drugs, and the decision to ignore clear safety measures from the city. So what I want to do is I want to rewind just a few minutes and go back through the same story that counsel just told you, but put those details back. It's February 9th, 2025, right outside this building in Center City, Philadelphia. Our own Philadelphia Eagles are going against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're trying to prevent a three-peat. They're trying to do their job. 2 fans in particular are excited. Sam Farnsworth and his friend Lanny Davis. They start that morning, their pregame, with 2 Bloody Marys. As the afternoon goes on, 2 drinks turns into 3, 3 into 4, and before you know it, they've had 8. Then the game actually begins. As the Eagles score their first touchdown, Sam and Lanny celebrate with 2 shots. The Eagles go up 17 at halftime. Sam and Lanny celebrate with 4 vodka sodas. The Eagles cruise to victory. The friends celebrate with 6 pints of Guinness. And you'll hear that Sam added cannabis on top of all of that. Now, members of the jury, no one today is going to tell you that the decision to drink on game day is wrong. It's not. No one today is going to tell you that the decision to do recreational drugs is wrong. Here in Pennsylvania, what Sam did is perfectly legal. But what we are going to tell you, what we are going to ask you to remember, is that if you make those decisions, you have to stay within your limits. But you'll learn today that Sam and Lanny didn't. After ordering 20 alcoholic beverages, they leave the bar, and they see a clear warning sign from the city. A light post with a fence all the way around. But after deciding to drink, and after deciding to do recreational drugs, the two friends make a third consequential decision: to disobey the city's warning signs. Because members of the jury, you'll hear today that the decision to get high up on the pole, 18 feet in the air, that was Lanny's decision. You'll hear that the decision to get high and then stand at the bottom of the pole, right below his friend, Sam made that decision. You'll hear that those were personal decisions and that the city had nothing to do with them. They decided to get high. And it's not the city's fault they fell down. Despite that, the plaintiff has brought a claim of negligence against the city of Philadelphia. And as Mr. Adeite explained a moment ago, that means they have the first burden of proof in this case, meaning they have to prove to you that the city acted unreasonably and that the city's unreasonable actions caused Sam's death. They have to prove those more likely than not. They will fail to meet that burden because we'll show you that the city put in clear warning signs to stay away from the poles and that they had a safety protocol in place to take the fans down. But even if you disagree, even if you believe that the city acted unreasonably, as the defense, we've raised what's called an affirmative defense today of comparative negligence. And what that means is that if we prove to you that Sam and Lanny's own unreasonable decisions caused Sam's death, then you can find them liable for the harm. So as you watch the evidence today, as you listen to the testimony, I want you to weigh the reasonableness of the city's decisions against the reasonableness of the decisions that Sam and Lanny made. Because Mr. Dave is right. The city's director of public safety, Walker Edwards, will take this stand. And what he'll tell you is not that, as Mr. Adeite has said, they didn't grease the poles because they wanted to save money, but that they didn't grease the poles because greasing the poles would make it slippery and would make it more dangerous for people to climb. He'll tell you they had a plan instead to fence off the poles, to keep fans away from them, and to have police officers order them away. It was their safety protocol. They did have a plan. Mr. Edwards will tell you that today. But you'll also hear about the decisions that Lanny and Sam made. The decision to drink, to do recreational drugs, and to disobey the clear warning signs the city put up. You'll see that those decisions were personal, that the city had nothing to do with them, and that they caused Sam's death. They decided to get high. At the end of the trial, you'll see that it's not the city's fault they fell. That's what we'll ask you to find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Adeite, would the plaintiff like to put on a case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Lanny Davidson.
Okay, Ms. Davidson, you are sworn.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
Whenever you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hey, my name is Lanny Davidson.
Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I go to UCLA Law School. I'm a 2L there. I want to be a lawyer too.
Ma'am, could you flip to exhibit 1 in that binder and
Yeah.
tell us if you recognize that person?
Yeah, I know who this is.
Who's the person in exhibit 1, ma'am?
It's Sam. Sam was my best friend. I met Sam, when we were both just in college. We found out we were both from Phillies and we both loved the Eagles, and so we bonded over that.
Do you know why you're here today?
On February 9th, Sam died. I climbed a light pole and I slipped. That's how he died. So I'm here to represent his family.
I want to talk about exactly what happened on February 9th. How did the day begin?
Well, we started the day by getting some breakfast. It was Super Bowl that day. So we headed over to a cafe, and then after we decided to go to a sports bar around 11.
When the game started?
Game started at 6:30, but we went to a different bar at around 2 just to make sure we get good seats. Busy weekend for them.
Did you see anybody else drinking that day?
Yeah, it was the Super Bowl and it was Philly. Everyone was drinking.
So what happened after the game ended?
I don't know if you remember this, but it was a blowout game that day. So, the whistle ends and everyone just rushes out the bar into the streets and people are celebrating, they're dancing, they're laughing, and so we joined them.
Did you see anybody climb anything?
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the crowd. People were climbing on cars, on benches, on post boxes, anything you could stand on, really.
Did you climb anything?
Yeah. I climbed on a light pole.
Ma'am, was there any sort of barricade between you and the light pole?
Barricade? No, nothing like that. I mean, there was a small fence, but it was small. I just stepped over it.
I want to talk more about that fence. The only thing between you and the light pole. Ma'am, could you turn to exhibit 35?
Yeah. Okay, I'm there.
Do you recognize that?
Yeah, this is a fence around the pole. It looked exactly the same as the fence that was around the pole that I climbed.
The plaintiff moves exhibit 35 into evidence.
And I believe that's pre-admitted, right?
Yes, Your Honor, for the briefs trial counsel.
I'm
Okay,
approaching the bench and the jury with a copy.
yeah.
Ma'am, you said the fence was the only thing between you and the light pole. How'd you get past it?
It was a small fence. I just stepped over it, really.
So when you got to the light pole, did you see if there was anything stopping you from climbing it, like oil or grease?
No, and I checked. I kind of touched the light pole a little bit. I felt it on my hands, and there's nothing there. So I climbed up.
Man, you just said you checked the light pole before you climbed it. Did your drinking that day impair your judgment when you did that?
No, there's nothing on my hands. There was no grease, so I went up.
So after you went up that light pole, did any police officers tell you to come down?
No,
Did any police officers tell you you shouldn't be up there climbing that?
no.
So what happened when you got to the top of the pole?
I mean, I get up there, and for a second, it's the best thing, right? You look out, and it's a sea of green, and it was supposed to be a happy moment. And then I slipped. And everything goes black for a second, and I feel a body underneath me. And it's Sam. He died.
I'm sorry we had to talk about that, Miss Davis. I've just got a few more things to ask you.
Yeah.
You said earlier you checked the light pole for grease or oil.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, it was a thing really in Philadelphia, 2022, right? The Phillies, they went to National League and I was out there on the streets again and the light poles had grease that time.
Did you climb the light poles that had grease on them?
No, I would never try to do that. It's too hard.
Why didn't you climb?
It's a greased pole. There's not much to climb. You can't get up there.
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation as to you can't get up there. We have a good faith basis to believe people have climbed grease poles all the time in the past in Philadelphia.
May I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, she's not speculating into anyone else's mindset. I asked her about herself and why she didn't climb it. When she says you can't get up there, she's really talking about herself and how she can't climb a pole that has grease on it.
I tend to agree. Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, ma'am, can you tell the members of the jury why in 2022 you didn't climb a light pole that had grease alongside it?
I didn't climb it because it was grease.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. McDonald.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Morning, Ms. Davidson.
Morning.
I just want to make one thing clear for the members of the jury. The reason you're testifying for the plaintiff today is to avoid getting sued yourself. Is that true?
No.
Now, you just a moment ago, I'm here to represent Sam's family. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
After Sam died, Sam's family actually sued you, right?
At the beginning, yeah,
You were initially a defendant in this case, right?
I was.
And the reason they sued you was because you were the person who fell from the light pole onto Sam, right?
Yeah.
But then you and the Farnsworths, you've gotten to an agreement, right?
Well, yeah, I told them what happened, that it was an accident. They dropped the suit.
They agreed to dismiss the suit permanently, right?
Right.
And in response, you agreed to do what you just did, to testify on behalf of the plaintiff, right?
Yeah, to testify on behalf of the family. That's right.
With that in mind, I want to talk about some personal decisions that you and Sam made the day he died. And let's start with the decision to drink. Because
Okay.
the fact is you both had alcoholic drinks that day, right?
Right. I won't dispute that. We did.
Your Honor, I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness with copies of exhibits 7, 8, and 9. Approaching counsel. And approaching the witness. Would Your Honor like the first copy? Sure. First the bench.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ma'am, looking at these exhibits, you can see these are receipts, right?
Yeah, they're all receipts.
You recognize that these as your and Sam's receipts from the day in question, the day he died, right?
Yeah, these are the different cafes and bars that we went to.
They all look fair and accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so.
The time stamps match the time you and Sam were at the cafes and restaurants, right?
10 p.m., 2 p.m., 11, yeah.
And all of the food and drinks they match too?
Pancakes, burrito, apps, yeah, that's what we had.
Your Honor, the defense offers exhibits 7, 8, and 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections.
Without objection, they're admitted. You can
Ms.
publish
Davidson?
the-
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Davidson, let's walk the members of the jury through exactly how much alcohol you and Sam ordered that day.
Okay,
Because for the first receipt, exhibit 7, that's at 11 a.m., right?
right.
Looks like you ordered 2 Bloody Marys, is that right?
Yeah, one for Sam, one for me.
You finished them both?
Yes, we did.
Second receipt, exhibit 8, that's the bar you went to, right?
Yeah, 2 p.m.
You ordered 6 beers, right?
Yes, that's what we ordered.
That's now 8 alcoholic drinks, right?
Well, no, I don't know if we finished all 6 of the beers.
Right, you don't even remember if you finished all 6 of the beers, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was in February. I don't remember if I drank all of them.
But you do know that you ordered 8 by this point, right?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Game's not even started by this point, sure.
No, it's 2. Kickoff's at 6:30.
And then you went to a bar for the game itself, right?
Yeah, that's McGinnis.
You ordered 2 Jameson shots, right?
Yes,
6 pints of Guinness, true?
yeah,
And 4 vodka sodas, right?
yeah, we shared them with everyone at the bar.
You're saying you shared them with people at the bar. Ma'am, you don't remember how much you shared versus how much you had, right?
No, I wasn't keeping track or anything, you know, the game's going on, you have a beer, something like that.
You don't even remember what specific type of alcohol you had that night, right?
No, I mean, I had the Bloody Mary and I probably had a couple beers and stuff like that.
But ma'am, out of the shots and the Guinness and the vodka sodas you ordered at the bar, you don't remember what kind of alcohol you had, right?
Not exactly, no, I don't remember.
But you can tell the members of the jury that you and Sam ordered 20 alcoholic drinks over the course of the day. Sure.
Yeah, I guess so. Didn't drink all of them out.
Let's talk about what happened after you ordered 20 alcoholic drinks. Because after the game, you and Sam left the bar, right?
Yeah, we rushed into the streets.
Didn't go back home, did you?
No, not immediately.
Didn't call an Uber?
No, we
Didn't call-
celebrated.
Didn't call a taxi?
No,
You just went into the streets, right?
yeah,
And you saw a lamppost, right?
yeah,
Now, Mr. Adeite asked you a question on direct examination. He asked you, were there any barricades to this lamppost, right?
I was asked that.
And you initially said, no, nothing like that, right?
Not a barricade, there was a fence for sure.
If you take a look at exhibit 35 again.
Okay.
Then you saw this fence blocking off the lamppost entirely, right?
Yeah, I was there.
But you decided to climb over the fence into the enclosed area, right?
Yeah, I did.
There weren't any city officials making you do that, right?
No, definitely not.
No one asked you to do that, right?
No, I wanted to climb the pole. I was a fan.
That was a personal decision you made, true?
Yeah, that was my own decision.
And you saw the light post, right?
Right.
You climbed up it, right?
Yeah,
All the way to the top, true?
Yeah.
18 feet?
18 feet.
There weren't any city officials asking you to climb up, right?
No, like I said, I climbed to the top. That's my decision.
And what's more is you asked Sam to climb over the fence, too, right?
Well, I asked if he wanted to climb up to the top of the pole with me. He said no, but he climbed over the fence.
You actually asked him to spot you, right?
Yeah.
And then he did, right?
Yeah, he was at the bottom, I was at the top.
He climbed over the fence, right?
Right.
You didn't see a city official asking him to climb over the fence, did you?
No.
Didn't see anyone talking to him, right?
No, not at that moment.
You didn't grab his hand and drag him over the fence, did you?
No, he climbed over with me.
As far as you could tell, he did that himself, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And then he stood right underneath the lamppost, right?
Right next to it.
When you got all the way to the top, you looked down, right?
Yeah.
And in your words, you'd say he was right beneath, right?
Yeah, I saw him for a split second and then I saw his face right beneath me.
As far as you could tell, no one was asking him to stay there, right?
No,
No one was holding him in place, looking right up at you as you're 18 feet above the ground, right?
I guess no one was forcing him, if that's what you mean.
As far as you could tell, the fact that he was there was his decision. True.
I guess, yeah.
Ms. Davidson, thank you for your time. I have nothing further.
Does that prompt any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Davidson, opposing counsel asked you about drinking. Is it usual for you to drink at a sports game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big drinker or anything, but having a couple beers at the Super Bowl, yeah, I would do that.
What were you celebrating back in 2022?
Well, that was the Phillies. They won the National League, so I was out in the streets for that.
So ma'am, you're saying it was usual for you to drink at a sports game, and you were celebrating a sports game in 2022?
Objection, leading.
Your Honor, I haven't asked the question yet. There's nothing, I'm not leading the witness to say anything.
I'm gonna give him a little bit of leeway, but your objection is noted. And
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Davidson, you're saying it's usual for you to drink at a sports game, and you were celebrating a sports game in 2022. Did you climb a pole then?
No, there was grease. I would never climb a grease pole.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any recross based on that?
No cross examination, Your Honor.
Okay.
Can Ms. Davidson step down?
She may. Thank you for your testimony.
With that, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests its case in chief.
Okay, before we proceed to defense's case in chief, are there any motions for the court?
None from the defense, Your Honor.
From the plaintiff?
None from the plaintiff.
Judges, are we okay to keep moving? Okay, Mr. McDonald, it's your case.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls Walker Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, you are sworn.
Thank you. Have a seat.
You may.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself, ladies and gentlemen?
Sure. Hello there. My name is Walker Edwards.
What's your connection to this case?
I'm the public director of safety for the city of Philadelphia.
Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. Brought 2 kids to the school system. Lifelong Eagles fan. So I'm happy to do the job.
Mr. Edwards, are you aware of the plaintiff's claim of negligence in this case?
Yes, I am. I'm aware they're saying that the city didn't do enough to protect Mr. Farnsworth at the 2025 Super Bowl.
I want to be very clear for the members of the jury. Did the city of Philadelphia grease the poles on Super Bowl Sunday this year?
No. No, absolutely not. We didn't grease those poles.
Why not?
Look, we do our best with the safety, but we can't control the decisions that people themselves make. Every single time we've tried to grease those poles, people still climbed up them anyways. So our thought was that if we make them less slippery, if they're going to climb, well, it would at least be more safe.
Mr. Edwards, we'll get to the decisions the city can and can't control in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about your general safety protocol. During a massive event, let's say a sports game, how many people can you usually expect to see on the streets of Philadelphia?
Thousands and thousands. For the Super Bowl, we were expecting over 100,000.
Do you have any safety protocols in place to keep track of that many people?
Absolutely. We have plenty of protocols. We've used fences, police officers, we've blocked off roads, reefs, things like that.
What specific concerns are you looking out for when you've got a crowd that big?
Look, it's mayhem after these kinds of games. I mean, people are flipping cars, they're lighting fires, they're breaking windows, they're climbing the lampposts that line the road.
You mentioned climbing the lampposts. What sorts of strategies has the city employed to try to stop them from doing that?
Everything. We've tried fences, we've tried greasing, we've tried not greasing. No matter what we do, people, they still climb.
You said you tried greasing. Did that stop them from climbing?
No.
What about not greasing? Did they climb that?
Yes, they did.
You said that you also tried fences. Did that fix the problem?
They didn't.
Had you tried all of these strategies before Super Bowl Sunday of this year?
Yes.
Well, if you tried all of them going in, then could you walk the members of the jury through your plan for what your safety protocol was going to be for Super Bowl Sunday?
Of course. Once we decided that we weren't greasing, we hammed up all of our other safety mechanisms. So we put up those fences. We had an increased police presence. We ran a PR campaign threatening prosecution for anybody who climbed the poles. Well, we had police trying to get them down.
I want to see if we can give the members of the jury a picture of what all of this looked like. Do you know if there's any photos or videos of Super Bowl Sunday in Philadelphia?
Certainly, I've seen many.
Would you recognize the video if I showed it to you?
Yes, I'm sure.
Your Honor, permission for Ms. Davis to step into the well and show Mr. Edwards a video. It's Exhibit 42 in this case.
Granted,
Thank you.
has opposing counsel seen this video?
I have seen Exhibit 42, Your Honor.
Mr. Edwards, do you recognize that video that Ms. Davis is showing you right now?
Yes, I do.
Have you seen it all the way through?
I have,
Were you in Philadelphia on Super Bowl Sunday?
of course.
And does that video fairly and accurately represent what you remember the crowd looking like?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, the defense offers exhibit 42.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 42 is admitted.
Mr. Edwards, I'm gonna have Miss Davis play 2 clips of this video, and I just wanna have you explain to the members of the jury what you see going on, if that's okay.
That sounds good.
Miss Davis, can you play the first 15 seconds of the video? Mr. Edwards, could you describe to the members of the jury what you saw there?
Right. So this was all the chaos I was talking about. There's crowds, people pushing, shoving, throwing things. There's police everywhere.
Did the city have a protocol for that kind of chaos?
Of course, yes.
Ms. Davis, if we could play from 2:04 until 2:08. Mr. Edwards, what do you see there?
That's somebody climbing one of those posts.
Did you have a plan for if someone did that?
Yes, of course.
What was it?
It was to get police officers to tell them to get down.
I want to see if that protocol was followed. Your Honor, I'm approaching counsel and the witness with exhibit 6, or excuse me, 4, 5, and 6. Approaching counsel. And approaching the witness.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir, looking at exhibit 6, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. This is a police report regarding the incident with Mr. Farnsworth.
Does it look fair and accurate?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, the defense offers exhibit 6.
Any objection?
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay. The statements from the police officer are out-of-court statements, and they're using them for the truth of the matter, sir.
Your response?
Yes, Your Honor, this falls under an exception to the rule against hearsay under Rule 803.8. It's a public document. Under Rule 803.8A3, one of the exceptions is if it's made a report made by law enforcement personnel in a civil case. That's exactly what this is. It's a police report from a city official in Philadelphia, and it just details the steps of his investigation. Therefore, it falls under the exception.
Agreed. Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's exhibit 6.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is admitted.
So returning to the second page, does the officer say whether they saw Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth?
Right. I'm there. Yes. It talks about that person, Lanny Davidson, climbing the 18-foot light pole. The officer then details how he worked his way through the crowd and started yelling at Miss Davidson to get down.
If you look at the third full paragraph here, the one beginning when Davidson, could you read the first sentence there?
Third full paragraph, just one. I see. When Davidson fell on Farnsworth, Farnsworth's head hit the metal fencing and started bleeding.
And then the paragraph below that, could you read the last 2 sentences?
Yes. As I approached the pole to order Davidson down, Farnsworth was inside the fencing next to the pole. Farnsworth was looking up at Davidson, smiling, pumping his fist and chanting, "Fly, Eagles, fly."
So, sir, on the pole that Miss Davidson climbed, did the city put a metal fence around it?
Yes, that's one of the fences I was talking about.
And did the city's police officer tell Miss Davidson to get down?
Yes.
If you could look at exhibits 4 and 5. I want to compare the city's decisions to Lanny's and Sam's. Do you recognize those?
Yes, these are the toxicology reports from the night of.
Do they look fair and accurate?
They seem to, yes.
Your Honor, the defense offers exhibits 4 and 5.
Any objection?
No objections.
Okay, they're admitted.
Sir, could you describe the blood alcohol content of Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth that night based on those reports?
Yes, of course. I'll start with Miss Davidson, who was the one in the lamppost. Her blood alcohol content was 0.07. As far as Mr. Farnsworth, his blood alcohol content was higher. That's 0.1.
What were the times on those reports?
Both of these were about a quarter till 1 a.m., so about 2 hours after the fall.
Did Mr. Farnsworth have any other substances besides alcohol?
Yes. In addition to the alcohol, it seems that Mr. Farnsworth tested positive for marijuana.
Thank you, sir. No, I have nothing further. The approach may retrieve the documents unless counsel wants them for cross-examination.
He can retrieve them.
You may.
These are all yours.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, cross-examination whenever you're ready.
Hello, Mr. Edwards.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm like a 6.
Got a few questions for you, sir. Hopefully we can get you up to a 7. Sir, I want to start off by talking about some decisions you made that you didn't mention on direct examination.
Sure, let's do it.
So we can agree that you started applying grease to light poles back in 2018.
Right.
You would do that for major sports playoff games.
Well, yes, we would.
You eventually stopped doing that 2025.
That's correct.
That was for the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl.
Right. The NFC is kind of like the Super Bowl qualifier, and then, well, the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl.
So, sir, if somebody were to say the reason you stopped putting grease on the light poles, it wasn't to save money, well, sir, that would be incorrect, wouldn't it?
Sure, that was part of the calculus. That's true.
That's right. You were spending $10,000 greasing light poles.
Yes, we were.
You didn't think it was worth that much.
No. Put together with all of our other reasoning for why it might not help safety, it seems frivolous.
You also thought people were making a mockery of you because of what you were doing.
Right. Like Philadelphia became known as the city that was putting Crisco on their lampposts.
You thought it made you look bad, right?
Right, it looked a little silly, sure.
You care about your public image.
Sure, yeah.
That was one of the reasons you stopped putting grease on that light pole.
Sure. That was another reason, sure.
But sir, the reason that really sealed the deal for you, that's because you thought putting grease on the light poles that encouraged people to climb them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. See, back in 2008, but before we started putting grease on the light poles, we were actually getting less reports of people climbing.
You thought that because of your common sense and your experience.
Right, that's the experience. Yeah, the comparison.
So, sir, let's talk about your experience and apply some common sense to it. I'm going to ask you some questions and I'm going to write down your answers. Let me know if I get anything wrong.
Will do.
You said back in 2008, that's when you first started getting reports?
No. I mean, we had reports before then, but that was when we started measuring it. Yeah.
Your first measurement, that came in at 5 reports, right?
5, bingo.
Next set of reports, 2018 NFC Championship.
Correct.
At that point, you got 10 reports.
Yes.
I'm writing 10 on the board.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay to the cumulative statement of reports. My understanding of the evidence is that various people are reporting in people climbing on light poles, and those are all statements being made out of court.
Your response? Your Honor, those statements come from the party opponent of the plaintiff. They're collected on behalf of the city of Philadelphia. That's our party opponent in this case. And under Rule 801D2, they're not hearsay statements.
Can I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
They have to lay foundation that the reports themselves are coming from some internal division within the city. It's our understanding that these are actually reports being called in by various individuals. Perhaps a citizen could call into the police. That citizen statement, that doesn't fall under the party opponent rule.
May I respond?
Very briefly.
Your Honor, what this witness has testified to on the stand was we collected the reports. He's talking about himself and his division. He's not referencing any outside people or citizens. They source the reports and then they give that information to him. So that information is coming from the city of Philadelphia. It's the party opponent.
So I understand your point, but the reports had to have come from somewhere and the city was not the one making the calls per my understanding of this witness's testimony. So I am going to sustain it in part and ask that you lay a little bit of foundation to determine whether or not those reports came from someone who is a true party opponent in this case. And then you're welcome to try that question again.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Edwards, the reports you got of people trying to climb light poles, that was official business, right?
Yes, they called in,
You needed those reports to do your job.
of course.
You accepted those reports as true.
Yes, we did.
So when you got reports in 2018, you got 10 people trying to climb the light post, right?
10.
That was when you added grease to them.
Yes, that's up from the 5 the year before with no grease.
The next time you got a set of reports, that was 2022 and 2023, right?
Correct. Yes, of course.
Both those years, you got 15 reports, right?
Right.
I'm writing 15 twice on the board. Sir, 2023, that was the last time you ever added grease to a light pole.
Yes.
After that, it was 2025, the NFC Championship.
Right. That's the qualifier.
At that point, sir, you took all the grease off the light poles.
Right. We saw that people were still climbing them, as you can see. So we figured that at least if we took the grease off, they wouldn't be as slippery, less likely to fall.
But sir, you would agree that after you took the grease off the light poles, those numbers increased, didn't they?
Yes, very much so.
Sir, they didn't just double.
No, it was 75.
So they didn't double.
No,
They didn't just triple.
no.
Sir, you got 5 times the amounts of reports as you did back when you put the grease on the light poles.
5 times.
The number you said was 75.
Right.
So, sir, let's talk about some other things that you experienced. You said earlier that people kept trying to climb the poles when you put grease on them, right?
Yes.
But sir, nobody died, right?
No.
It's true that out of those 75 people who tried to climb the ungreased pole, well, one of them, they got unlucky and died. Isn't that true?
Very tragic. Yes.
I want to be clear, that person was not Sam Farnsworth, right?
No.
This was 2 weeks before Sam Farnsworth died.
Right. It was a young man named Nasir Muldrow. He passed.
So 2 weeks before Sam Farnsworth died, someone else died trying to climb a light pole with no grease on.
Absolutely. Yes.
So with that time to prepare, sir, surely you put the grease back on the light poles, right?
No. No. We still thought our logic made sense. That people were going to climb anyways.
So, sir, even though you had 5 times as many attempts, and somebody died on your watch for the first time, you still didn't put the grease back on the light poles.
No. No, we didn't.
You know, after you refused to put grease back on those light poles, 2 weeks later, Sam Farnsworth dies.
Yes. Of course. I'm well aware.
Thank you. No further questions.
Does that prompt any redirect?
No redirect examination, Your Honor. Mr. Edwards be excused.
You may, Mr. Edwards, thank you for your testimony.
You're very welcome.
Does the defense have any further evidence or testimony?
No, Your Honor. With that, the defense rests its case in chief, and we're ready for closing whenever the plaintiff is.
Okay, I'm assuming no motions at this point either.
No motions.
Mr. Adeite, you can proceed to your closing argument.
May it please the court. The city was overwhelmed. So they didn't do what was obvious. On February 9th, 2025, the city of Philadelphia failed Sam Farnsworth. They got caught up in other things and they forgot their job. Everybody. They got distracted by money, publicity, 100,000 Eagle fans, and they stopped making the right decision. They were overwhelmed. So they didn't do what was obvious. That's why Sam Farnsworth's family brought this claim of negligence against the city. The judge will instruct you that this case, it comes down to 2 very simple issues. When you go back to deliberate, you get to look at this verdict. It asks you 2 questions. Did the city's negligence cause Sam Farnsworth's death? And how much of it was their fault? We showed you today that the answer is yes, it did, and all of it is their fault. So what I want to do now is walk through how we showed you that by talking about 3 simple facts. The city was overwhelmed. They failed to make the obvious fix, and their failure is what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. So we'll start with that first point. The city was overwhelmed. Because you heard it just a few moments ago on his cross-examination. In the weeks leading up to Super Bowl, the city of Philadelphia had other things on their mind. They were distracted. They had different things going through their head. You heard that after 7 straight years of adding grease to those light bulbs, they thought, hey, the cost is just a little too much. But members of the jury, money is not more important than safety. You learned that after 7 straight years of adding grease to those light bulbs, they thought people were making fun of them, thought it made them look bad. But members of the jury, publicity is not more important than safety. And you learned that after 7 straight years of adding grease to those light bulbs, they wanted to focus on other crimes. And members of the jury, that's where it gets a little tricky. Because today, we're not saying that the only thing that mattered was the light bulbs. We're not saying that the only important thing to focus on was people climbing light poles. Everything else mattered too. When it comes to safety, when it comes to public protection, you cannot cut a single corner. You cannot take a single thing lightly. You can't let the pressure get to you. People are counting on you. People are counting on you to keep them safe. That leads us to the second fact we proved today. That the city failed to make the obvious fix. Because what this case comes down to is whether or not it was the right choice, the safe choice, to put the grease back on the light bulbs. And members of the jury, the obvious answer is yes. That's what they should do. It was staring the city of Philadelphia right in the face. And there are 2 major reasons why that was the right decision. First, the numbers support it. Because we learned that in every other playoff game before 2025, they would add the grease to the light post. A few people would try to climb it. Nobody got hurt. They called it a day. I mean, look at the numbers we were seeing, members of the jury. 5, 10, 15, 15. I mean, people were trying to climb the light poles, but nobody was getting in. And then look at what we're left with, 75. 5 times as many, an insane jump, members of the jury. Nothing else changed. This wasn't the first time the Eagles won the Super Bowl. This wasn't the first time that people in Philadelphia wanted to go outside and have a good time. But what changed, members of the jury? What changed is that they took the grease off of the light poles, and that put the people back on. And then there's the second reason why bringing back the grease was the right idea. And that's because somebody died and took it away. Because you learned that out of those 75 people, somebody got real unlucky. Somebody who wanted to climb one of those ungreased light poles, they fell, they hit their head, they died. Just like Sam Farnsworth, but 2 weeks before Sam Farnsworth is ever back in town to even watch the game. The city had 2 whole weeks to prepare for what happened. They knew exactly what would come if they took the grease off the light poles. They saw it. A life was in their hands, and they still did nothing. It was obvious. It was their responsibility. But make the people safe. Put the grease back on the light poles. Not what they did. And that brings us to that third fact we proved today. And that's that the city's failure to act, well, that's what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. Because you heard today, straight from the horse's mouth, Lenny Davis. What she was doing was wrong. What she was doing was reckless and dangerous. But you know what she wouldn't have done? There was grease on the light poles. I mean, all day today, the defense has tried to talk about decisions that people made, but what this case comes down to is the decision that the city made, the decision to leave the grease off those light poles. Just remember that every single time Lenny Davidson goes to a sports game, they drink. They get a little drunk, they get a little intoxicated. But every single time, except for one that they went to the sports game, they didn't climb a light. The only time, drunk or otherwise, anything else going on, the only time they climbed the light pole, well, there was no grease on it. That's what this case comes down to. So when you go back to deliberate, members of the jury, when you take a look at that verdict form, you know that the only person's fault was Walker Edwards and the city of Philadelphia. They failed to do their job, and that's why Sam Farnsworth is dead. That's why I ask that you mark yes on question 1 and nothing less than 80% on question 2. Find them lying. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Adeite, if it's court. They decided to get hot. It's not the city's fault. They found. Members of the jury, let's go back one last time to February 9th of this year. Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth have already made some pretty consequential decisions. The decision to drink, the decision to drink some more, so much they don't remember exactly how much, and the decision to do recreational drugs. But they see one more decision. They see a light post with a fence going all the way around, practically screaming at them, don't climb, it's not safe, you could get hurt, you could hurt someone else. The decision that matters the most in this case is what they did next. Because they didn't heed this warning. They must have known what the fence was for, you can't not. Instead, they both jumped over. They both go inside the enclosed area, the space they're very much not supposed to go. Lanny climbs straight up 18 feet. And Sam stays in the danger zone, knowing there's a metal fence right there, right beneath his friend. They're both drunk. They both know it. They decided to exceed their limits anyways. Mr. Adeite and I agree, this case is about decisions. But the most consequential decision, the one that most directly led to Sam Farnsworth's death, was that. The decision to jump the fence and climb up into the air. The decision to jump the fence and wait at the bottom right below the person climbing who you know is drunk. When they got high, they knew they could fall. And it's not the city's fault they did. We're in court despite those facts. Because today the plaintiff sued the city of Philadelphia for negligence, saying that it's not Sam's fault that he stood underneath his friend as she's climbing up drunk, that it's not Lanny's fault that she climbed up drunk and then fell, but it's the city's fault. Because sure, they put around a fence, sure, they had police monitoring the situation, sure, they yelled at her to get down, but they still didn't do enough. That means the plaintiff has the first burden of proof in this case, to prove the city acted unreasonably, and to prove that that unreasonable action was the cause of Sam's death. But we know that's a burden they failed to meet. The only decision the plaintiff has critiqued of the cities today is the decision not to grease the poles. That's it. One decision. So let's evaluate that. You heard today that Mr. Edwards told you the reason he didn't grease the poles wasn't just because of the cost, wasn't just because of the PR, wasn't just because of how many people would climb, but how slippery they were. I'd ask you to use your common sense and experience. If you have grease on the poles and you've got 5, 10, 15 people climbing, they're very likely to slip. If you've got them ungreased, then it's easier to grab onto. It's not a perfect situation. You might disagree. You might think in hindsight, as Mr. Adeite has said, that it looks unreasonable. But based on what the city knew at the time, we have to call that decision what it is. A judgment call. The city made the decision that it made sense that if you don't grease the poles, people will be able to grip on more easily. In hindsight, it was clearly wrong. But based on what they knew at the time, it was reasonable. It was considered. They weren't overwhelmed. They had a plan. They had meetings. Mr. Edwards told you himself. It's not as if they weren't trying to make these decisions right. It's not as if they made it in the spur of the moment. They considered it through. They weighed the evidence. You might disagree in hindsight, but they definitely had a plan.
And apart from not greasing the poles, remember what they did do right. They put a fence around the poles to prevent people from going inside, very clearly saying, this is dangerous, don't do it. And they had their own officer tell anyone climbing the poles, don't climb, get down. You saw the police report. We showed it to you in this case. The officer went to the pole and yelled up, get down, stop climbing. Lanny Davidson didn't care. Whose decisions caused this problem? Was it the city officials for putting up the fence? Was it the officers for yelling, get down, don't climb? Or was it Lanny Davidson for stepping over the fence, for continuing to climb despite being told not to? Was it Sam Farnsworth for stepping over the fence, knowing his friend is drunk, seeing her climb 18 feet in the air, and deciding to stand right beneath her anyways? Folks, even if you disagree with the city's decision not to grease the poles, which is the only one they've critiqued today, this case isn't done. Because that just brings us to the affirmative defense of comparative negligence. If we prove to you today that the reason Sam died was because of Sam and Lanny's own unreasonable actions, then you can find them liable. So let's weigh the city's decisions against Sam and Lanny's. The city's decision, a judgment call not to grease the poles, that was reasonable, consider that they met about, versus Sam and Lanny's decisions. And we showed you three. The decision to drink, to order 20 alcoholic beverages that day. We know they had at least 8 of them. We don't know how many they had in the end because Lanny had so much to drink he doesn't remember. The decision to do cannabis, and the decision to disobey the clear warning signs they were shown. Members of the jury, if either one of them at any point exercised an ounce of common sense, we wouldn't be. To know their limits, to know they were drunk, to know that the fence was telling them stay away, it's dangerous, you could put others at risk. If Lanny realized she was too drunk to climb 18 feet in the air, if Sam realized she was too drunk to stand right underneath, if either of them realized that if they just stayed outside of the area the city told them not to go into, they would be safe, we wouldn't be here. Their decisions caused the harm. The city had nothing to do with it. They got high, they knew they could fall. And it's not the city's fault they did. That's why we're asking to find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal, Mr. Daison.
Opposing counsel talked to you about hindsight. He said it was just a bad judgment call. But you know what's crazy about this case, members of the jury? They had hindsight. Somebody had died 2 weeks before Sam Farnsworth. That's hindsight. Opposing counsel comes up here, he touches every single one of these numbers but 75. Because he knows that's the one that proves the city messed up. I almost can't believe what I'm hearing. The city lets one person die. Then they let another person die, and he says it's Sam Farnsworth's fault for trying to catch his friend? No, that's not what this case is about. This case is about where they cut short, what they forgot to do because they were overwhelmed. When one person died on their watch, that was unfortunate. When they let a second person die on their watch, it was reckless, it was careless, it was negligence. Find them liable.
All right. Great work, everyone. I am going to ask the advocates and witnesses to step out while judges submit their electronic ballots, and then we'll tell you guys when you can come back in for a little bit of feedback.
Oh.